Hello again, everyone. My name is Mr. Joshua the Storyteller, and I will now be reading you the third part of my story entitled My Succubus and Me. If you like what you're hearing and would like to hear more, or simply have questions, possibly you're even looking for other stories, please go to fabledchronicles.com. Magic, no doubt, the boy said under his breath. He had heard of such devices, charmed to never go out, so as to be especially useful on long adventures. What do you have there? It was a smooth voice, like the beautiful playing on a violin. Without a moment's thought, the boy responded, feeling very much at ease by the voice. Oh, just some strangely colored bottles and one of those everlasting candles. Sounds interesting. The boy turned and gave a smile. Then his heart skipped a beat. Behind him the succubus loomed, no more than a few inches away. She now sported a massive, bulging stomach, stretched ridiculously wide. The two men were missing. The boy started to tremble and shake, almost dropping everything. She gave him a warm smile, sitting down to his level. "Well, if you're not just the cutest little mouthful," she said, closing her right hand over the boy's, which happened to be holding the vials. She projected a grin so inviting it was as if the words she said held no meaning at all. The boy wanted to fall into that inviting feeling and just forget all of his worries. The succubus opened her mouth, revealing her teeth and pink throat. It continued to expand till it gaped large enough for the boy's head to fit. Pink swallowed the boy's vision, and he could feel the succubus's spell holding him. She leaned in close, her breath washing over him. Her right hand helped him drop the vials, landing with a clink on the floor. Slowly her hand slid gingerly to his shoulder and held him firmly. Now the boy couldn't move, even if he tried. The succubus's left arm now swept around to his other shoulder and glided down to his wrist. Her touch lingered on his skin, smooth as silk. Slowly she pried the boy's fingers away from the candle, and it fell into her open hand. The tempo of the moment changed. In that moment the succubus's touch grew cold, a grip like ice. Her mouth closed, returning to normal, and her breaths grew quick and shallow. Her face flickered with a pang of fear. She jumped back, metal rings on her skirt clinking together. She held her arm out as though it had caught the plague. Her fingers arched backwards away from her palm, trying to drop the candle. But the candle wouldn't fall. It stuck to her skin. The wax of the candle, growing white-hot, started to snake around the succubus's skin. She screamed in anguish and tried to tear at the rope-like vines of wax coursing up her arm. The moment her hand struck through the wax, however, the wax on her fingers began the process anew on her other hand. The boy watched in shock as the succubus was slowly bound by the wax. By the end of it, she was completely entrapped by the wax strands, which lost their white-hot intensity and hardened. Adding to that, the top of the succubus's head now held the tip of the candle on it, flame burning bright and strong. The succubus's cries had dulled to an angry hiss, as she writhed with her new bonds on the floor. The boy still had not properly understood what had just happened, or that he was not going to be swallowed alive. He sat staring at the succubus, still shaking a bit. A long time seemed to pass like this, the boy watching the succubus. Her strugglings started violent, and looked as if she was going to hurt herself before breaking the bonds or giving up. Slowly her struggling tired out, and eventually the two sat in silence, only the succubus's haggard breathing breaking the peace. While watching the show, the boy had regained some of his senses. He decided to stand up eventually. The succubus had rolled over onto her back. He could not make eye contact with her any more, and was grateful for it. His hands clasped around the hilt of the skeleton's sword. The sword was a rather short one, which worked great for the boy, being so young, as weapons were built for men, not for children. He knew that the sword really would do nothing to help him. He didn't even really know how to use it. However, he held on to it, gripping it till his knuckles turned white. At least with something in his hands, he felt more prepared than if he were to walk up there with nothing. The boy crept as quietly as he could up to the succubus. She had fallen in between the boy and the exit, so he was going to have to get past her one way or another. He could not bear to bring himself much closer than a few feet away. Her breathing, ragged as it still was, filling the room as the only real sound. The boy lifted his foot to take another half-step forward, but it hung in the air, refusing to touch the ground. With a surge of energy appearing out of nowhere, the succubus rolled herself over to face the boy. His breathing stopped, and his foot sank back as her deep black eyes pierced into him with an icy gaze. His hands held the sword up by instinct, as if the blade could sever the stare. The boy's lungs hurt, and he fell to his knees, now remembering to breathe. The succubus broke her gaze with a long sigh, and looked up at the ceiling. Moments passed, but the boy had long ago abandoned trying to guess the time he had spent in the cave. "If you're going to do it now." The succubus's voice was as beautiful as ever. The boy looked at the sword, practically fused to his hand. No part of him saw himself stabbing the succubus with it. That would involve getting quite close to her, which he was not planning on doing any time at all. I can't," the boy squeaked out. The succubus looked at him again, but this time with amusement. "What is it that you want, then?" Her voice, soft and calm. The succubus had regained some composure. "What do I want?" the boy said, confused. "Want? What do you want?" "I don't want to die," the boy said defiantly, adding, "and I want to be able to leave this cave," a second later. The succubus nodded her head, as if agreeing with him. "An understandable thing to want," she said. "But what would you give for it?" "Anything I have at this point," the boy said, his mind scanning over the few things he owned in this world. "Perfect," the succubus smiled. A wall of black runes, bathed in pale fire, burst into life up in the air. The boy jumped back, afraid the runes would attack him. But they stood still, only the fire moving about. "Can you read them?" "Read what?" the boy cried out in alarm. "The words," the succubus said, looking up at the black runes. "No," the boy said, "I can't read." Even as he said that, his eyes looked up to the runes. He was not lying. He could not read the runes. The thing was, he didn't need to. The runes' meaning seemed to flow into his head like a small stream. It felt strange and awfully intrusive. The boy rather wanted it to go away. "Magic," the boy said under his breath again. "Do you agree with it?" The runes explained what the boy wanted, and that he would give anything he had for it. "Yes," the boy said, double-checking the runes. "Then sign it." "The runes?" "Yes. It's a contract, really." "Now, how do I sign that? I can't write, let alone reach them." "Just say your name." "That's all?" "That's all." The boy gave it one more moment of thought, then said, "All right." "Matthew,"